What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history, in recent American history.
The most extreme organization in history. Joining me right now is the Washington Examiner political and investigative reporter, Sarah Westwood. Sarah, good morning to you. Thanks for being here. Your reaction to what you just heard from our president.
Yeah, I think these are tactics that Democrats recently tried. It reminds me a lot of the Virginia gubernatorial race, where Terry McAuliffe built his entire campaign around, demonizing Trump and his supporters and using a lot of hyperbolic language about what Republicans would do when they were in control, focusing on, the Republican stances on social issues and just not talking about things that people actually cared about, like having a say in their children's classroom, like being able to afford groceries and to put gas in their cars. And so because of that, I think we've seen that this is an unsuccessful model for Democrats to run on. And I think Democrats are also running a big risk of overplaying their hand when it comes to the abortion issue, because while it is true that polls show that most Americans do think that abortion should be legal, they also think it should be, the Bill Clinton way, safe, legal, and rare. And I think polls also show that Americans support the kind of common sense restrictions that are at the heart of the Dobbs case, like the 15-week ban in Mississippi, which is what is really at issue here. So I don't think the issue is as strong for Democrats as they think it is. And people who feel really strongly about abortion, one way or the other, they probably already have a party, and they're probably already pretty attuned to the political conversation. So those aren't the voters that Democrats need to persuade.
Yeah, I mean, I was referring to what Biden said about MAGA. Those people who believe in Make America Great Again and putting America first are the most dangerous group in American history. And then he says in recent American history. I mean, so more dangerous than the Black Lives Matter, more dangerous than the Nazis. I mean, more dangerous than ISIS terrorists. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous to use this kind of language, and particularly from the guy who told us he's going to come in and unite us. Your thoughts on that, as well as whether this is going to work. Another dirty trick from the Democrats to leak this draft opinion, because obviously they're so desperate because they're expecting to get slaughtered in November. Will it work?
Again, I don't think so. I think we've seen Democrats run this playbook before, not just in Virginia, where Terry McAuliffe, focused entirely on demonizing the MAGA crowd, and that was unsuccessful. But we saw Hillary Clinton try it too, to, make you guilty by association if you supported Trump, that you were in this basket of deplorables. That's a really alienating thing to say to the millions of people who support Trump. Or if, they soured on him, they still support his core beliefs, what you would describe as the MAGA agenda. And so we haven't seen Democrats be successful with that really anywhere. Even though Joe Biden won the presidency, Democrats suffered down ballot losses when they ran that playbook again.
Yeah, well, a new Fox News poll finds that the majority of voters support banning teachers from discussing gender identity and sexual orientation with kids before the 4th grade. Sarah, you've got parents weighing in on this, and yet the Democrats are still pushing that this stuff should be discussed from kindergarten to the 3rd grade.
Right. It's sort of Democrats have, I think, lost touch with how extreme a position that is. If you look at the polling in Florida, for example, which is the state that has imposed laws that stop those sorts of gender discussions up through 3rd grade, even the majority of Florida Democrats support that kind of law. So I'm not sure what the broad constituency is for this idea that we need to start teaching these divisive, sensitive issues to innocent children who could, enjoy their childhoods without being exposed to those sorts of ideas that they will have to grapple with when they are later on in life. So this is another example of where Democrats are just completely out of touch with where the mainstream of America is on education. They have already sort of touched this third rail of pushing their sort of leftist agenda in the classroom and seen how devastating that can be to their electoral chances. And yet they don't seem to be learning those lessons from Virginia, from New Jersey.
Right. Right. I mean, look, do they even know what is taught in kindergarten? I mean, it's the alphabet, it's numbers. Sarah, thanks very much. It's good to see you. We'll talk soon. Sarah Westwood joining us this morning. Great interview.